Mogul skiing is always one of the favourite sports we have here on Off the Podium. I actually did the math in the lead up to this interview, and today's guest is our ninth mogul skier, which I think basically makes up for more than half of the freestyle skiers we've had here on Off the Podium. And I'm sad that Colin's not here today to really fluff his love up for the sports, but I will carry the torch for him today because I'm so excited to speak to today's guest. Competed at the 2018 Winter Olympics in PyeongChang, a finalist in the women's mogul. She finished in 20th place and had an esteemed career across the sport. And I'm so pleased to learn a little bit more about that career today to speak with the one, the only, Madii Himbury. Madii, first of all, welcome to Off the Podium.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. As we said, it's been a long time coming. We're excited to finally make it here.
I like to make it a sport sometimes, Madii, of just to see how long that we can take to get somebody on the show. So you did well. You passed with flying colours. So thank you for the opportunity to kind of do that. But it's always exciting to speak to anybody from any Olympic sport. But obviously moguls, as I said, we've got a bit of a history with that. But I love reading about your background and learning about how you got into the sport because you come from a gymnastics background, but also enjoyed skiing. And essentially it came down to you pressuring your mum one day to say, I want to join a club. And then your mum basically said, well, if you do one thing, you can join the club. So I'd love to hear that story to our listeners so they can learn how that came about.
Yeah, so you're spot on there. I wanted to join the Perisher Winter Sports Club team back in 2007, I want to say, and I couldn't do this 360 all winter. I was lucky enough to go down to the snow, and that's how I found moguls. So we have an inter-school ski comp here in Australia where you get to compete across a range of the different events. I had been doing gymnastics since I was 3 years old and always thought that was going to be my goal, Summer Olympics, let's go. But then I kind of fell out of love for that and I fell in love with skiing. I actually met Matt Graham, which I don't think you've had on the show, but we should make it number 10.
I would say he's another one I've sort of been back and forthing with over the years. So if you can nudge me over the line there with Matt, I wouldn't say no.
Yeah, so he could be your number 10, but I met him in the ski tube terminal and they were doing tricks on the trampoline. And I was like, oh, how do I get to be like them? All these kids hanging out, frothing about whatever they were doing, flipping, skiing, whatever, all day long. And I was like, I want to join that. And so mum said, you've got to do this 360 today, otherwise you're not going next year, because that was our last day on snow. We're going back to Sydney the next day. So I convinced my brother, go out there, help me. We built this jump and I just kept hiking it until I made it all the way around, because the biggest thing with 360, it's like the fear factor, right? You've got to just commit to it. It's not actually like it's actually kind of one of the harder tricks because you've got to spin and stay upright, but at the end of the day, if you just yank it, you'll get around. But I was just doing, oh no, I can't do it. So I was like, you're not going to make it in this sport with that kind of attitude, I think is what she was getting at. So I had to go out there, get some balls, get some confidence and go for it. So I got it, screamed at mum, made her come to watch me do this trick. And then the next year, unfortunately for her, she drove me back down and forth every weekend after school to go ski at Perisher. So God bless mum and dad.
I was going to say I probably might regret that decision all of a sudden to do that. But I find it fascinating that as a gymnast going into moguls, because generally the path we often find in Australia with gymnastics is aerial skiing. That's kind of the one that we constantly say, stop stealing our gymnasts aerial skiing, like leave some of them in the sport. But is there much transition that we don't necessarily hear about, that gymnasts actually go into mogul skiing as well?
You see a few kind of crossover, but in terms of Australian mogul skiing, I was kind of one of the late bloomers in coming across at 14. I was considered very far behind, but I did catch up really quickly. So I think they realized that they didn't need to start poaching athletes at like 8 years old, and they can see the transfer across. But we don't go poach like Aerials does, but that's mainly, I think, because of funding. So Aerials is like the winter sports baby because we had all those gold medals, and who runs the program in Australia loves aerial skiing. So that's his prized possession. So I get it. That's where a lot of the funding, a lot of the time goes into it, rather than for moguls where we go to inter schools and we're like, hey, you want to do a harder course? Come check out our harder course. And then they get petrified because it's terrifying. So that's unfortunate. But aerials did try and steal me as well when I started moguls because I wasn't that high level gymnast for them to come poach me at like national champs. But they did when I was skiing and training down in Melbourne, where a lot of the aerials were. We have a bungee cord where you practice flipping and whatnot. And so if you are in it and you don't bounce, somebody has to pull you down. Otherwise, you're just hanging like a hanging fruit off the tree there. And so the coach at the time, he was the aerial coach, was helping out the mogul team because we have a lot of crisscross. And he said to me, I'm not going to let you pull you down there until you say you're coming across to aerials. But I stood my ground up there and said, no, I'm not coming.
They're very aggressive, those aerial poachers, aren't they? What's going on? I keep saying that we need to get our own back for the great sport of gymnastics. I want these gymnasts to start going up to, the Jeff Henke Centre and watching these aerial skiers and go, no, come to gymnastics, because for far too long, we've lost so many gymnasts to aerials. Come on, let's get some of our own back and the other way around.
Yeah, the poor gymnasts, they need a lot more filling through the back end, that's for sure. But aerials, it's a good program, so they seem to snatch them up.
I just want to backtrack just a little bit just on that. You mentioned about initially you thought your path would be Summer Olympics. Obviously, your age, you were, about 6 when Sydney 2000 was on, living in Sydney. Did you kind of get involved in that sort of period of just that passion of the city? Do you remember sort of the Olympics at that age?
Yeah, I do remember going to a few events. I definitely went to the gymnastics and loved it. My parents were lucky enough to get some tickets here there. So we got to go, I think I saw the basketball and the netball as well. But yeah, that whole Sydney was just alive and people worshipped these athletes and you could see how amazing they were as like people, but just to be like, it's kind of like a shining stage was everything that I saw when they were performing. So yeah, that definitely drove home, I want to be there too. Just what sport? Let's just pick one, anyone.
I did actually see on your Instagram, you did a dress up, I feel, recently of the Sydney Olympics. So you sort of retain that passion. And just one thing actually on the note, just sort of talking about that sort of aerial skiing, and that's sort of the baby of Australian winter sports. Can we just point out that in moguls now, we've only won one medal less in the Olympics than we have in aerials. So same amount of gold medals. So, just pointing it out there. We're
coming for them, that's for sure.
We are coming, which actually leads me on that, because I'm doing this actually very early in an interview, Madii. I feel like this should come later on, but we're talking moguls. We've got to mention the GOAT, Dale Begg-Smith. Did you have any interaction with him in those early days or at all in your career?
No, so we pretty much crossed paths opposite time because I came into the sport too late. So he wasn't even really training when I came into the sport. It's more the people that went to Russia that would have a lot of interactions with him. But even at Russia, he wasn't really an athlete. He was there for a good time. But I heard he was a great time in Russia. So because he didn't really care so much.
What have you heard, Madii? Can you share with us anything that you've heard?
I know he was buying everyone shots, but he did water shots. So sneaky.
Oh,
he was just there to make sure everyone else has a good time.
I'm hoping this is like with all his fellow competitors and not just the Aussies. I hope he was going like, "Hey, everyone, shots on me! Get everyone pissed before the event." Wow, that's clever.
We never drink before the event. We're locked in a little bubble. We don't get to see the outside world until you make it to the bottom.
Yeah. Oh, we love anything related to Dale. He's just an icon and an enigma, all mixed in one. But I love the story of the fact that when you eventually got to World Cup level, your World Cup debut was on your 21st birthday. I mean, that talks about a pretty good, I guess, birthday present for you to kind of get to that level. And like, what's that experience to spend your 21st birthday competing at a Moguls World Cup?
Yeah, it was pretty surreal, to be honest. It was on the training day and I was telling everyone, because I hate when people don't know it's your birthday. You've already had that interaction. They have to come back to you and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." So I told everyone onto her, like, "Come on, let me know." So then everyone was ignoring me because they're like, everyone knows how much Madii wants everyone to say happy birthday to her. So nobody said it to me. But one of the boys got me a balloon because that was one of my requests. I wanted a balloon to go around, tie around to my backpack. But yeah, pretty much we went through competition day. It was a bit surreal. Some of the girls from the other team dropped off a cake, came over and just hung out for a little bit, played some cards. But then we were in the headspace for competition. but I did compete really well. So it was like an exciting kind of like, cherry on the cake. Who cares about the birthday? But I made it down the course and was really quite happy with my first World Cup. So all in all, great 21st birthday.
Great 21st birthday. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's fascinating when you said that coming into the sport quite late at sort of that 14-year age, and that's considered that way. I think wasn't Brit 15 when she made her debut in Vancouver, so it's kind of interesting how that plays about. But do you find that sort of through your background of what you had been doing in gymnastics, and you'd already been involved in competitive sport for quite some time, that it doesn't really matter about the age? You can sort of just kind of mentally switch into that athlete mode that even though you haven't been doing it for as long as some of the other people, you're still able to kind of use that to your advantage.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely caught up pretty quickly and was like kind of fast tracked through the program. So I was on like a development team within that 2-year period. So that's pretty, substantial. But unfortunately, I had a lot of injuries, so that pulls me off the program again. But with mogul skiing, it's a funny one because we're a judge sport. And what I do find is the longer that you're on World Cup, the more well known it's still personal branding, right? We're branding ourselves to the judges. And the longer you're there, even though you might not actually get that much better, your results will start to increase because they've known you, they've seen you, they've got that name, they've got the bib number. And obviously it is a judge sport, so there is bias, but we wear bib numbers on us. So the judges are sitting there, and if you've got bib number 60, they're already thinking, okay, well, you don't deserve to be in finals. It's so hard to change that mindset. And so the more they've heard your name, oh, they deserve to be here. They've been in World Cup for years. And then suddenly you're in the top 10 bib numbers. And so that's something that definitely works in your favor, is the more experience you have. Obviously, the experience comes with, you know how to compete on that world stage. You know how to deal with that pressure. You know what all the different courses are like. So it's not just about your name being known, but it's that experience on World Cup is something I definitely didn't get till a later stage in my life in my athletic career, which would have definitely been beneficial earlier. The Perrines of the world, she won an Olympic gold medal at 19. It's like I'd hardly skied a whole run.
Yeah.
So it's just that that experience obviously in that field is very beneficial. But yeah, I was set up well where my family, we did a lot of sport, we did a lot of activity, and my mum was a hard ass. You had to deserve an opportunity, and so that was kind of the mindset and the drive that I was instilled in from a young age that made me be able to achieve when I was given those opportunities.
On the flip side, with that judging aspect of it, though, I guess you also get to know the judges. So I can imagine, are there certain events where you go, shit, Trevor's judging today. This isn't going to be a good run for me?
I mean, I tried to not read too much into it. I know lots of friends knew like, oh, judge one, blah, 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 blah. But that's something that's out of our control, right? I can't change what the judge is going to think or put on that paper at the end of the day. All I can focus on is how I'm going to prepare for this competition and give myself the best opportunity for them to give me points.
Yeah.
Like give them to me as many as I can, but I can't control that. So there's no point fixating on that, because then you end up being in that blame game kind of thing. Well, I didn't get finals because they didn't give me the point too. It's like, well, maybe if you didn't put a leg split in there, they wouldn't have taken it off. What can you do?
I actually remember back in Vancouver, Channel 9 had the Olympics, so it kind of stood out a little bit. But when Dale didn't win the gold, and, a lot of people were angry, he deserved it, he was better than the Canadian and all that kind of stuff. And I remember the interview that Eddie Maguire's got Dale Begg-Smith, and Dale, and just classic Dale, just completely monotone, doesn't want to be there. He wants to be going like counting his millions on his Cayman Island somewhere. But like just the way he was able to defend it and just be like this is a judge sport. Yes, this is what we deal with. At the end of the day, I didn't get the number. It was just such a fascinating way of doing it when you've got such an outrage from the media, and then that, which I'm sure as an athlete, again, in a sport like this, you've got your opinions. You want to be able to express it, but at the same time, too, you, I guess, get used to that, right? Because that's just the nature of the sport. It's so technical and complicated, and there's things that us in the media or other people are never going to understand because we're not there living it like you are.
Yeah, on the flip side, it can work in your favor. They can give you points. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I made a big mistake, and they somehow forgot to see it. So that's the perks of judge sports. Like sometimes it works in your favor, sometimes it doesn't. You just hope it's not all the negative side, because then you can get down in the dumps, you can get upset. But, at the end of the day, all you can do is put your run down and hope for the best.
That's what I absolutely love though about moguls, because it is. I'm more than ashamed that Colin, he's our Canadian co-host, who is mad into moguls. That's his sport. Like, if that's, he literally follows everything moguls related. But it is a sport that I guess if you watched it and didn't know anything about it, you would assume like, oh, okay, you're getting from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill in the fastest time. Like, that's all it's about. But obviously it's not. There's judging aspects. There's all that kind of levels. It reminds me kind of in a weird way of like a ski jumping, where you think that ski jumping is just literally who can jump the furthest, but it's not. There's a technical element involved that contributes to your score. And I heard on one of the interviews that I listened to in the lead up that you mentioned that that's what you loved about it, that it's not something that you sort of go into it knowing every day I need to set the fastest time, that you have to worry about time, but you also have to worry about technique and all that sort of stuff that makes an element to it, which I guess for you makes it very challenging but rewarding at the same time.
Yeah, particularly in a training space, because there is so many aspects to our run and to the performance. Is in a training day, if one jump is not going well, and you can just get the shits, but you can always focus in on something else. And so that's what I like about the sport, is there's so many different areas you can focus in on, and maybe that will turn your day around or make you feel better about the sport again. But yeah, it is an exhilarating sport where you want to be the fastest but the neatest and doing the biggest tricks, and that with the most difficulty. So it's pretty like mad complex. So you need to like find out what is the best happy medium. And you see the boys do it a lot because they have a whole bag of tricks. The girls less so much. But in qualification, particularly when you're up that high end, when you're like the Matt Grahams of the world, where you're more than likely going to qualify for finals. So there's no point busting your ass in that first run with your hardest tricks, putting down fastest runs. Like, you put down the run that gets you into finals in a good position, and then you slowly build up in the day. I didn't really get to that point where I was like slowly building up in the day. I was kind of like coming in hammer for Madii. But that would have been nice too. But in a training concept, we obviously build up. You hold back some harder tricks as you go, but you don't want to, be blowing your load in that first run where you get overexcited. You see that with younger competitors where they get really excited, particularly when you make your first finals, because you're all jacked up, you're there. And the course is really nice for finals. That's the other thing. So you just feel like you're like, floating on clouds. I don't know what a good expression is. Obviously not one, but
works.
you feel like a legend walking on water. I don't know. So you just like want to push yourself and show the world like, I deserve to be here in finals. And so you'll see a lot of those first timers, crash or go too big and land back seat. But that's kind of the fun of the sport.
Which I can imagine too, is it a sport you find that momentum plays a key part? When you're just on it, you're just on. I mean, obviously in a big competition, you're doing what, like 5-6 runs until you even sort of get to like the big final, right? So like, I guess it's riding, I like the cloud analogy, like riding the clouds, feeling that. And then on the flip side too, you could just be having a shit time. Like, I've got the yips today. Nothing is working.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what makes a really good athlete, is to be able to turn that day around when you're having that horrible day and you're not feeling it. But yeah, it's building into that day, but it's pretty much what run 7 probably is where you'd be looking at that medal run. So you need to be peak performing, but you also need to be above everyone else till you get to that point. And like I said, for us, it's, the boys are done in 22 seconds. The girls are done in 26 seconds. If you make a mistake in that first second, you need to let it go and move on. If you hold on to that and you keep doing leg splits, you stuff up your top jump, you're going to ruin your chances. So we say perfection's not attainable. It's about recovering from these mistakes as quickly as you can and moving forward, because at the end of the day, 26 seconds, it's done. You don't want to be regretting that you're worried about that one little leg split, a third of the way down.
Which actually, one of the other things you said in the interview, which had fascinated me, I never heard it quite described before, but a way for you to slow yourself down on the course is to deliberately ram into a mogul, essentially, which is fascinating to hear that. To me, somebody who's not good at science or anything like that, I think like, well, the harder you hit it, the more you're going to like fall over or kind of damage it. But I mean, that sounds like a very interesting way of kind of doing it. I need to watch out for that from now on when I'm watching moguls.
Yeah, so there's a few different ways you can slow down, but yeah, we can use the tip of our ski to go into it pretty hard, and that contact will push against you to slow you back down. You can also put your skis more across the hill. The most common one, you'll see people kind of look like they're Zamboniing the course for us. We used to joke some athletes who are they're just clearing it up. They're making it nice and smooth for you. They get that real pivot across it, or you can go really wide turnstile. So you'll see a lot of the Japanese ski that turnstile, which is like the purest turn. It's beautiful skiing, but it's not very efficient. And you can make a lot of mistakes doing that technique. So in a competition perspective, you wouldn't really choose to do that style. You'd use the Zamboni, the more ugly skiing, because it's actually better in terms of not making mistakes. And the judges aren't there. Well, they are technically there to judge you on how well you ski, but at the end of the day, they're judging you from what mistakes you're making in front of them. So it's best to go with that technique. But I remember one time I had made a big slow down move, and they said that my ski technique changed too much in the run. So it looked like two different skis. I said, what do you mean? It was like this. Of course we're going to slow down. So apparently I was too good at the skiing part because I slowed down too much. And I was like, I've never had anyone tell me that, but sure. So,
Wow.
I mean, that's just what the judges' feedback was. I was confused. They gave me the feedback. All you can do is take it on board.
Penalised for being too good. Jeez.
Yeah, well, that's what I'd like to tell myself.
Yeah, I'd take it. Absolutely. So is there that option, though? You're allowed to sort of approach the judges to request feedback?
You can ask for your scorecard, and sometimes they'll give you feedback, but I can't. I think the rule is your coaches have to, and it has to be after the event, and they can't retrospectively change anything. So it's not going to change anything, and it might actually make it worse because Madii complained about this. We don't like the Australians because they come with too many issues. But if you don't bring it up, then maybe they'll keep making the same error and over again. So maybe flagging something that, is a consistent error might help you in the future. But, that's the politics of the sport.
Always got to love the politics. Do you find that many skiers, once they retire, become judges? Is it sort of like, say, like in the AFL, you'll have a player might retire and go into umpiring, things like that?
Not so much, no.
Wow.
Gotta say, I don't know too many young judges really. I think it's because it's pretty niche in terms of the judging schedule is pretty small, so it's not something you can really do as a job. It's more like a little bit of a fun on the side because you have that passion. But a lot of people go into coaching, less so in Australia because, well, for me, the biggest thing is that I spent so much time traveling and being on the road to then be a coach and then spend 9 months a year out of my home again just seems absurd. But other countries, I think it's a lot smoother transition where you're away for 3 weeks, you come home for 3 weeks, rather than we're away for 4 months, come home for 2 weeks. Like the ratio to having, our own life, because we put everything on hold to go and pursue this passion, it just seems like I'd be putting it on hold again, but each to their own. But that seems like the more common pathways, the coaching.
You've had all those years behind you, Madii. You've obviously only recently hung up the skis in the last couple of years. So I think you're entitled to have a bit of time where you can enjoy some sun for 5 minutes as well, right? Like, snow for 9 months of the year. I got a very random question, actually, which I'm surprised we've never asked any of our moguls guests, because back in 2018, when we were doing our first Winter Olympics, we actually sort of did some live commentary of the moguls. So we would have been commentating yourself in the final, and then we did the men's one. And one of our co-hosts, Jared, liked to point out that coming down the moguls, you would line up your favourite mogul. You would line up an exact mogul and go, that's my favourite mogul. That's where I'm going to make my move. So, Madii, can you confirm or deny that mogul skiers have a favourite mogul on a course?
Absolutely not. I don't know what that is. It's Jared Hughes.
He needs to do his research, doesn't he?
I don't know where he got that one from. No, I can tell you which one I didn't like the most in the course. Normally, you pick out a tricky element of like how you're going to get over that mogul, but it wouldn't be my favorite mogul by any stretch. Maybe the one at the very end because I've crossed the line.
I'm not going to say there was like the one that completely turned things around. That got me the gold. That one there. Go give it a pat. All right, good. Thank you. I don't know if actually I threw Jared under the bus, or maybe it was me who said that. But hey, he's not here today, so I can easily get away with that. When it came to you make your World Cup debut, that's obviously in the beginning of 2015. Do you set that target towards PyeongChang? Is that sort of like the go-to goal, or does that become more of a target the more you become established on the tour and it sort of looks like that can become a possibility?
I mean, I think I had it before then, to be honest. I wanted 2014, but things didn't work out in terms of injuries. But I think that's what makes, I think most skiers would say that they would be thinking about those Olympics way before you get even close to them. It's just the more you get close to it, the more you might verbalize those thoughts because you're not so embarrassed about telling other people that you might, about this big dream that you might not achieve. But yeah, I just had a lot of injuries up until 2014, so that was really out of grasp for me. But into 2018, the girls' field of Australia was the most competitive it's ever been. So it actually became more and more nerve-wracking the closer we got, because we had 8 girls fighting for 4 spots, and I had my result really early on for me. But something I speak about a lot in other interviews you probably heard about. My anxiety and panic attacks into PyeongChang, where I kind of lost myself to the sport, where I thought my value as a person was my results. So every weekend, I put more pressure on myself to do even better next weekend because I'm getting so close to that goal. It's like it's just in reaching sight. And so then I would go worse because I'd be like, no, but I have to be better. And then I'd, be kicking myself all week, thinking about what I could do differently, trying so hard. And the harder you try, the worse it got, which is like the hardest part because it's not that like hard work and intensity. It was like my brain overtaking what my body had trained to do all that time. So I got stiff, I got rigid. It just got a bit ugly.
Can you look back on that now in hindsight and reflect and add to your achievement, though, that you made that Olympic team, made the final based on everything that you were having to overcome on that side of things at that time?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would like I say that I went to PyeongChang as a bit of an observer. Obviously, I was an athlete, but I felt like I was deer in the headlights and I was watching everything go by. And I wasn't really there as the athlete and the competitor. And so I got to take on so much from that experience and learned so much and was like awfully proud of what I did because I couldn't even land that top jump in training in PyeongChang because I was, head over heels freaking out with this pressure. So to be able to make down that first run, the relief was unreal. And then I did get better that second and third run. I was really proud of how I skied. And so I can walk away from the Olympics saying I did the best I possibly could on that given day, which is what the sport is. Like you can't control the weather or the judges or the course setup, but all you can control is doing the best you can on that given day. And we have all sorts of crap happen. Like, when we go to the Asias, we're in the middle of nowhere. Lots of people get food poisoning all the time, but you got to compete. So you do the best you can with that. And for me at that point, it was anxiety and panic. And it was that disbelief in myself that I deserved to be there and deserved to compete for Australia. So overcoming that and really backing myself to get down that run and do my best run, was, super proud of. But I really, after taking that time off, I realized, I want to go back as the competitor. And that's why I really wanted to go to Beijing, was to, go out there and go after it, having that experience. But, some things in life work out and some things don't. So it is what it is.
I definitely want to touch on that sort of shortly in regards to post-PyeongChang in the lead up to Beijing. But one thing I always kind of like learning a lot, particularly with our winter athletes, is that level of attention that all of a sudden gets brought on you at an Olympic Games. Because, unfortunately in a country like Australia, we don't really pay attention to the majority of our winter athletes until February every 4 years. And even in the sport of moguls, all the eyes were on Brit kind of going into that because of the seasons that she had, even Jakara sort of at that point as well. So how do you adapt with everything that you're dealing with to all of a sudden you've got Channel 7 wanting to interview you, the Sydney Morning Herald, these sort of places that 6 months prior probably sadly don't give a shit about you that much because it's not an Olympics?
Yeah, it's a funny feeling, right? They call that post-Olympic depression, right? Because when you're at the Olympics, you're the be-all and end-all. They did our washing, our cooking, our cleaning. People come drive us in car services. I didn't get the media attention so much, but I felt the presence of Australia in terms of being there to represent Australia. And like we got given 2 bags of kit and you just threw your bags out. Like your life prior to this was non-existent. Now you're here for Australia and Australia only, which I thought was like, whoa. But also also the importance you felt as an athlete there, because everyone was there for your beckoning call. Like they would do anything for you. And you're like, okay, if you'll do anything for me, that means I need to do this one little thing for you, which is get down the course. But you definitely saw the pressure. I think, I can't speak for Matt and Britt, but like Britt into 2018, what happened there? Like the girl was skiing like no other, and the closer she got, it all just went to crap. And Matt flew under the radar and he got the medal, right?
Yeah.
So where does that pressure come into? And then in reverse, Matt went to Beijing and had all that pressure. Obviously, there's other things going on. We don't know what's happening in their headspace. Like he had that injury into it. Could have been that. But then, you have Cooper come out of the woodworks when he doesn't have any of that pressure. He's just flying there solo. So, I mean, we have something to say for that, where they just suddenly bank it on us, rather than with the Summer Olympics, your Kate Campbells, they're getting it constantly. They're used to that crap. They don't care if people call them, they'll just ignore it. Rather than for us, it's like, does that pressure leading up and that added little, 3 months of people calling you, like I even got overwhelmed by a bag of clothes. So, it is something to say, because I think they're trying to be supportive, the Australian media, so we can't really be mad at them. But where's the support versus knowing what's best for us?
It is fascinating, and I always love hearing these stories around this, because as much as we love to get the Matt Grahams and the Jakara Anthonys on the show to hear their story, it's sort of often the stories from the athletes who don't get that sort of spotlight or haven't come home with the medals, who you learn the struggles where, and even based on what you're saying, Madii, about like everything that you've overcome to just simply line up at the top of that hill. And that's what, to me, as it's such an Olympics geek and Olympics fan, is where it's fascinating, and where we still sit in this Olympic movement, that people can still feel that way, because it's such an effort to even make an Olympic team than to start at the top. Like we had Taylor O'Neill on the show and learning everything that she overcame and everything along those lines. And it's insane to hear that. And then just for 20 odd seconds, you're on screens on Channel 7 maybe at 10 o'clock at night, and just to go through all of that for that, and you're like, wow, that's a journey and a half for 21 seconds.
Yeah, it's pretty funny to look at that with that perspective. But I mean, you wouldn't have anyone coming on here that tell you that they don't love their sport.
Absolutely. But on the flip side, the positives, we always love hearing about sort of those Olympic experiences outside of that. I mean, obviously, talking through what you were going with at the time, were you able to, I guess, soak in any of that Olympic atmosphere, things like village life, like you talk about getting your kit, like do you kind of have a little moment of a pinch me moment of, there are the Olympic rings, here I am, like I'm an Olympian?
Yeah, the Olympian part was crazy. That was definitely the bottom of my first run that I made, was like my proudest moment at the Olympics, even though it wasn't my best run. Rather than the other runs, I got better and better. But, to overcome that and to make it down and finally say I'm an Olympian. I had a pretty funny moment going up the chairlift. I had a few friends come and watch me, as well as my family. And I
T-shirts with your face on it, didn't they, from memory? Yeah.
I didn't know anything about that. So I'm going up the chairlift, about to go to my run to compete. And there's like 5 of my big fat face on there. And Mum said, well, I edited you up, honey. You look good.
What did you do, Mum? What did you think beforehand?
Yeah. I was like, did I need editing? But I thought it was really strange, because Mum, like 3 weeks ago prior to it, was like, do you have a photo of you? I'm like, Mum, I have so much on my Instagram. You have so many photos of me. What is this? But now it all makes sense. So that was really cute to have them support me. But also, that overwhelming feeling is like, oh my God, they're here for me again.
That's incredible. Which, I mean, obviously, again, we're going to get to Beijing, but obviously a very different experience, that if you had ultimately been able to compete there with that. So to kind of have that, and Korea itself, like it did seem like a very hospital games, like they got very much behind it. It seemed like a very, I guess, fun winter games to be a part of in Korea.
I don't know about that hospitable, because we actually had a lot of issues in the area we were, because they closed down the resort the year prior. So all the locals lost all their income. So they were really upset, because their businesses went under. So then when we turned up to compete for the Olympics, they were actually rioting.
Wow.
Because the government wasn't supporting them to be there. So all the retail shops were burning their retail gear out on the streets till 4 a.m. to keep us up. one of my parents' friends had to move hostels because they were playing music
Well,
and
here's
burning
stuff you
stuff
never
all the
hear
time.
about, Maddie.
Yeah,
They
sorry,
like
I
to
don't know
kind of
where you
gloss
got the
over that.
hospital.
I clearly have got the rose-tinted goggles on there that I've been
Yeah.
sold with this, but that's insane. I've never heard that story before.
Yeah, so it's quite unfortunate because the people didn't want us there. But they had a lot of volunteers and great people that were in the village. But if you left the village, you could definitely feel that, they had been hard done by this Olympics. They had not got anything to gain by being locals and being a part of it.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Very, very fascinating. That's a whole other podcast in itself, kind of getting to that, because obviously, I remember back in Sochi, kind of everything around that, Rio, then Beijing, like kind of all the stuff was there. But from memory, like at the time and everything, there was nothing negative about PyeongChang. So insane. Wow. Glass ceiling broken there all of a sudden. I'm thinking about that. I want to talk about that, the second run though, for you. So you set your score. There's 5 skiers to come after you in that point. Obviously, 2 more will go ahead of you. So you're teetering on there to the final spot to get into that final. And then Camille goes down. Now, like, I always love talking about these sports where, again, you never want to wish harm on your competitors. You never want to wish anything on those lines. But there's obviously that part of you where it's kind of like, oh, just like make a mistake or like do this or do that. Like, what is going through your head before she goes down, knowing that like you're just hanging on by a thread to get into that final?
Yeah, look, I was watching them all, and another media one where the guy, so you walk through the media turn, Sarah, before when you leave the thing, and the guy goes to me, "What place are you in? Oh, 20th, you won't stay. I don't need to talk
Oh,
to you." And I was
where was he from? Shame him right now.
I can't remember. It wasn't Australia.
All right,
Australia
that's
would
fine
never
then.
do to us.
Yep.
No, it was an international one. But I was like, oh, okay, thanks so much. So I was like, and off I walk. But yeah, I was watching it because I was doing the media, so I was trying to concentrate on these conversations with people. But also I was like, what is going on up there? I need to know what's happening there. But yeah, you kind of, and we know all these people. We've competed with so many of these people for so long. So you want them to do well. But obviously I wanted to do well. And in that point, I'd done a way better run in that second run, but I hadn't got much of a better score. So I was really pissed off at that too. So I was like,
You want to punch that journalist. Like,
Yeah.
oh, what did you say to me?
I was like, no worries.
Wow, geez, that's terrible. That's really, and obviously then it's a quick turnaround because then you're the first skier as sort of the lowest qualifier. You're straight up to the top of the hill straight away. So do you even have a moment where you can speak to your coach or kind of like try and reflect on what you then need to do from that point on?
Yeah, I had a brief moment because we were standing there waiting for everyone to get through. So we were still talking, but we weren't really talking about tactics because we were very tense about planning for something that may or may not happen. But I do have a coach that comes to the top as well. So he's more like in that headspace, getting me back in the zone again. I can't actually remember what was said, to be honest. It was all just a little bit chaotic, but I think it was just like, go, 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 up you go now.
Quick!
Get back in the zone.
And do you walk past that journalist and go, ha ha, do you want to talk to me now?
Yeah, the second time I came through, but he didn't want to talk to me, obviously. He's probably embarrassed. I was like, so you should
should have refused. You should be like, nah, not talking to you now. See how it is. Screw you. That's fascinating. I mean, did you set yourself a goal in PyeongChang? Obviously, you said you were dealing with all the stuff you were dealing with, but had you set that self, like, I want to make the finals, I want a medal, like kind of like what was your goal? And did you ultimately leave PyeongChang satisfied with 20th place?
I would say no. I wanted to be so the next final was top 12 final, which would have been like a good result for me considering the year that I had been, and like that would have been really on par with the results and like my best skiing. But that last run, I skied quite well. I just drifted my bottom air. And, you can watch other people's runs and you can say they had a bigger drift or they had a bigger mistake and they didn't get as deducted as me. But at the end of the day, when you're last out of the gate, they know that you're last. So they start the scores lower because they want to start building. And so from that back end, you've kind of got nothing to lose, right? Because you've got to go all or nothing. So that's like the sweet thing about coming in last. But you also do have to prove to yourself or prove to the judges that you deserve to be higher. And unfortunately, making a mistake like that, that's not proving to the judges I deserve to be higher. So that's, you win some, you lose some. And I went for it. We'd been trying to, my bottom air was drifting left, drifting right all comp. And so we were trying to get it more and more left. And I committed to that left, but I committed too hard to the left. So I over drifted. So it's just like would have been taking what I'd been doing all comp being better, probably, but it may not have gotten me in that 12th anyway. So I needed to change something. I needed to do something different. It just didn't work out.
Still forever can be introduced, though, as Olympic finalist, Madii Himbury. They can never take that away from you.
Of course, yeah. Some people like to say was an Olympian. And I don't want to be a wanker and be like, it's not was, I still am.
Always, yes. No, I'm firmly on board with that. That's, once an Olympian, always an Olympian, right? So, always keep on that level. One thing I noticed, though, Madii, is your lucky number 20 by any chance?
No, but I did get 20th place a lot.
That's what I like. World Cup debut 20, World Championship debut 20, Olympic debut 20. So I just feel like this is something that if it's not your lucky number, maybe it needs to be because it can just follow you so much.
Yeah, I like the single digits more, but you win some, you lose some.
You can be different, be hipster with it. Well, look at Jakara with a gold medal. Does she have 3 20th places? No. So, kind of go that way. Obviously, then in the lead up to Beijing, so obviously a fair bit happens in that period. But how quickly has your mind switched from, okay, one Olympics, as you're saying, you took this as almost just like a trial run. Well, this is, I'm going to go to more of these in the future. And can you sort of give us, a brief summary of sort of that 4-year period that ultimately led to, unfortunately, not making Beijing? You were the first alternate, but give us a bit of an overview of kind of what happened in that period.
Oh, that's right. That's a very chaotic 4 years for me. So after PyeongChang, I took about 6 to 9 months off for mental health leave. I tried to come back after PyeongChang for one camp, and I still wasn't right in the headspace. Like just taking that little bit of time wasn't enough. I still needed to find myself outside of sport again and really find out if I still loved sport the way that I did, because I kind of fell out of love for the moguls. So it was just kind of riding the wave, and I wasn't going to give up on my dream. But then I, found myself, I was feeling much better myself. The panic attacks started to decrease a lot. I was getting on top of the anxiety, had some really good coping techniques, and I realized I still wanted to ski. Yay. So I went back to the Australia and said, hey, happy to come back now. And they said that they would take me back as long as I fixed my mental health. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Politics, yay. We had a bit of change of staff, but they decided they wouldn't take me back on as an athlete. So I was then an unsupported athlete, and I said, well, I've still qualified for World Cup starts. And they said, no, you haven't. And I was like, yes, I have. So then I had to fight for the World Cup starts, got back on World Cup, but in the competition leading in Perisher, I was trying to prove myself a lot. It's really easy to go back and say, if I'd done something different. And I was really angry at the Australian system and not helping me there. And at nationals, I'd had a big crash the day before, and I probably wasn't in the right body space to compete. But I said, I just want to get back in the start gate. I want to remember that I still can do this. So I got back in the start gate, and I qualified in 4th with a mediocre run. So I was like, I'm killing it. This time off. And then I went back around, and I said I wasn't going to compete in finals, but then they're like, well, you've made it in 4th, may as well. And so I wanted to do the back full, the trick I wasn't allowed to do at PyeongChang, because they were like, you need to do the best run you can. So we kind of put that on the back burner. So I wasn't sure if that was the reason why I wanted to keep skiing, to prove to myself I could do this trick, this harder trick. And maybe that would be tick box, now I can be done. Anyways, I bent back around, did that off the top air, and it was slushy because it's Australia, and my leg just went in the snow, and I was like, something's not right. I went down, I skied down to the side, I didn't even cry. I was like, oh, this feels a bit funny. But I'd retorn my ACL, so 3rd ACL.
I was going to say, you had your triple digits there, the hat trick, right?
Yeah, left, right, left. And then because I'd fought for my World Cup starts, and I was, not so sure about what Australia was going to do, I hid it from everyone because I didn't want to lose those starts, and I didn't want to have to go through that process with them. And I didn't think I could go through another ACL surgery and having that much time off sport. When I just had 9 months, I felt like if I took another 9 months off for an ACL, I would never make it back. And I just was like, I was so dying to get in the start gate and wanting to prove to myself that I still deserved to be there because, those decisions that made me feel isolated, made me feel like I didn't deserve to be on the team or didn't deserve to be on the World Cup team. So it was a lot of like mental game in terms of, continually telling myself, I should be here. So we tried to go the non-operative way and went overseas. And the first time I went skiing, and then about a month in, I was flipping, doing tops to bottoms, and my knee like gave way. And it was probably the worst crash I've ever had in my entire life in terms of pain. So we came back to the drawing board, reevaluated everything, and then COVID hit. Yay!
Heard of that. I think I remember that.
So we didn't know what was going on then, how long it would be, and when I'd get back on snow, when I could test my knee again. So we went through another year, went back overseas, and so we're into like the Beijing qualifying year now. And so I still have no ACL, and so it's just a bit of to and fro. Like I could ski really well, and I was skiing better than I ever had. I had to change my technique slightly to not be so crazy in terms of how big and how messy I was. I had to be more neat and conservative to protect my knee, but I had developed a lot of technical skills so that there was quite beautiful skiing compared to what I used to do. So I kind of had to mold the way that I was skiing. But unfortunately, with the no ACL, sometimes it would just tweak and I'd have like 4 days off snow where it would just be swollen and then I'd be back on again. But, in the competition circuit, you've got to be ready when they're ready, right? So my pre-qualifying into the Olympics wasn't great. I was injured twice. Then I had like a neck one too. It took my head out in one of them. And then I was just like down in the dumps, it's just like hard to get yourself back up every week when you're being like fighting through this never ending battle of injuries and I don't deserve to be here and the team making me feel like crap and all this sort of shit that's happening over there. Like it's so hard and so insular because you live in this bubble, this world, and you can't see out of it. And so, because of COVID as well, we can't talk and hang out with people. So your bubble's even smaller. And so I understand maybe my perspective was definitely, well, not maybe, but, it was a really hard year to go through. And then, to not get selected when somebody else was injured was really, really tough. And so walking away from the sport last year, finding out that the girl they decided to take couldn't get down the course when I was told on hold there was like very upsetting because it feels very personal. And at the end of the day, it's not, and I need to like step away from that. But it seems like that they've been coming after me ever since, I took that mental health leave, which I'm sure they can't even give two shits about me. So how would they even think about that? Like they're so obsessed with Jakara and Matt. But, in my world, I'm like, what is happening to me? So that's really upsetting thing to go through. And I think it's something that I will never kind of understand. But I can walk away from the sport and those 4 years being really proud of what I did do in that space, and I wouldn't change anything. Like I love the athlete I became and the way I worked really hard and the person that I am now, and how I handled all those, political situations, and can be really proud of that rather than, like I said, you can't focus on the things you can't control. They chose that person. They're going to back that person. And that's sport. That's like anything in life. There's politics. There's things that go wrong.
Is there a pathway, though, there, Madii, that obviously we're talking, it's been about 18 months since all of this, but in the line where you could see an avenue where maybe there's some mediation, some help, and that you could then be brought on to somebody to help athletes maybe in a similar situation with you, that, to kind of say like, hey, like, look, this is what happened, sort it all out, but I'd like to try and be able to assist some of these athletes who are maybe feeling like I was, so that can help them become better athletes, and once they leave the sport, maybe be able to deal with this a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in the emotional regulation in sport right now because I was taught the physical and mental two separate things. So I kind of don't know how to approach the sporting world in terms of combining the two, but I would love to like mentor and coach people in that professional setting, whether it's sport or, corporate, but helping people understand these emotions, regulate these emotions so that when they get to that point where they need to perform, they can. So you don't feel like you're the observer like I was and miss that opportunity, but you go into every opportunity or every major thing knowing you've got that preparation, you've got that backing. So, I definitely learned a lot, and I'm enjoying speaking about it and love giving back to the community. And so hopefully there's, something good that comes out of all that bad that happens to me. But nothing good comes out of being handed an opportunity, right? So it's an interesting space.
Do you have any advice for people who are listening who maybe are in sort of a situation that you were in, and what sort of avenues that they can try and do to get some support?
Yeah, well, I think it's like really looking after yourself. So I kind of lost myself because I was so invested in this sport, and I gave everything into it. So I think keeping that perspective is really important, especially in those younger ages. So keeping up your uni, keeping up your school friends, keeping up some work if you can, having these other avenues and other people to keep that bubble really expand, right? So that you can see that perception, so that when on a training day something's not going well, you don't feel like the whole world is crumbling. And then, we talk about those mindfulness techniques, those coping techniques, because at the end of the day, we all feel anxiety, and that's fine because that's our fight or flight response. And we want that to happen because otherwise we wouldn't have survived this far. But you need to have those coping techniques ready so that when you get to those, high pressure situations, you've already practiced it in a controlled, safe environment and you can move on. So I like Smiling Mind, the app. I still see a psychologist now to this day, not very occasionally like I used to, but I think it's great for anyone, whether you think you have a mental health problem or not. I think it's excellent. So I think it's just having that awareness and slowly developing that extra awareness, getting extra tools in your toolkit, because you won't know what will come to you in the future, but you want to be prepared for it.
I still find it very inspirational though, Madii, that through all of that, period where you were having the panic attacks and anxiety and everything, that you could still strap on the skis and compete in Olympics and still make a final. I still think that's, through those, we all have the dark days. We all obviously have these periods, but for many people, they don't sort of wake up in a bad day and go, oh, well, I think I could go on the Olympics this day. It's incredible, I think, to overcome that, which I'm sure you use in sort of the tools that you're doing now to kind of promote this a little bit more out there, because that in itself is inspirational.
Yeah, I think as part of the persona, right, as well, that I was like trying to embody this athlete and be this person, where a lot of people didn't really know what was going on because I was hiding it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, if I pretend it doesn't happen, it doesn't exist, then it won't come all crumbling down. But at the Olympics, when we finished, I got the most awful flu. I've never had the flu before. I couldn't even stand up. I had to crawl to the bathroom because I thought I was going to faint. So my body was taking on the physical of the mental. Like I was 10 kilos lighter than I am now. I was in the 40s. I was so ill, so sick, because my body just crumbled. That, post-Olympic depression, where I just, I'd made that goal. I'd done the hard work, and now I could finally relax. And it just, it shut down, fully shut down.
Wow. The term post-Olympic depression, I used to always coin the term. I think it was after Athens, when I was a 17-year-old, ridiculously sad that the Olympics were over. What am I going to do for the next 4 years of my life? So I made a term called SAL, Severe Olympic Withdrawal Syndrome, which, every Monday after a winter or a summer games, I'm just like, I've got SALs. I'm a little bit sad when it comes to that. Maddie, we're going to get to some sort of questions to wrap this up, some fun get-to-know-you style questions to obviously end this out on. But one thing I wanted to touch on, just going through your Instagram, I see you've recently taken up Aussie rules. Is this a thing that you've recently started with? And as somebody from Sydney, I'm obviously originally from Tasmania, so I come from a Aussie rules background. I like seeing that people in this state pick it up. Like, where did this decision come from and how are you finding it?
Yeah, I wanted to do a team sport. So I hadn't done one since I was in year 10. That was when I did my first knee. And I obviously didn't have that team environment at the end of my career where I had all these people around me. So want to go back to team sport. I also, when I retired last year, couldn't exercise. I couldn't go to the gym for a month. I'd walk in, do a circle, check it all out, and walk back out.
That's what I do every time. That's what I've done my entire life. Don't worry.
Yeah. And so I was like, I need motivation as well. And so, yeah, I looked up on the university website because went to SUNY University and I looked at all the different sports, thought, what can I do with the least amount of skill but the most amount of athleticism? And don't get me wrong, AFL, they are very skillful, but I can still just run on the wing all day.
It's seagulls chasing a chip, let's be honest. Even as somebody who loves the sport, that's what it is.
Yeah, it's madness, but it's really fun. It's good to have such a good crew of girls around us. Great excuse to run and train every week. Although in the winter it's a little bit dark and drab, but it's really fun and it's nice to get that competitive streak as well without being like too invested, where it's like all heartbreaking. Rather than now, if we lose, we just go to the pub and have a few beers. So that's like a much better outcome.
Well, I was going to say, like, is there a level there where you kind of look at it as a pathway to maybe an AFLW appearance all of a sudden?
Absolutely not. I've done too many ACLs. I did not want to be injured again.
Did you end up getting the ACL repaired?
No, that was kind of AFL was the test. Like if I could go through playing a game of AFL and it'd be fine, then all good. So yeah, I haven't really had any issues since it. It was only in that like last 1% of mogul skiing where I was really pushing it, in particular in competition where you're making mistakes and you're recovering, really pushing that little bit is where it would swell up and just be unhappy for a few days. But I don't put my body on the line like that anymore. So hopefully it's going to be all good.
Do you find yourself now that you're playing the sport that you get invested in watching it? Like, do you become a Swans or a Giants supporter or kind of just don't really give a shit?
I mean, I love all live sports, don't get me wrong, but yes, I do start watching it because I used to go to the games, but I was like, what's going on? They're just running from one end to the other. AFL is the game with so many rules, but no rules, is what I always say. I'm like, you blew the whistle multiple times, but you're also smacking into each other going from the other end. So I'm like, no idea. So now I can kind of understand. So I'm like, ooh, tactics. So yes, I do like watching it. So hopefully tomorrow night Swans.
Yeah, well, like I've been living in Sydney now for nearly 8 months, and it has surprised me. I've been to a few Swans games that there is a lot more of a supporter base here than I ever gave it credit for. So, but I will say, and again, maybe I'm just being biased, having gone to lots of NRL games, better atmosphere at an AFL game than an NRL game. Do you think that, or different viewpoint?
I haven't been to too many NRL games, to be honest, but I like the AFL crowd. It's a bit more family orientated. I went to soccer the other day and it was good until they all started falling on the floor at the end.
Which soccer did you go to? Was that the grand final?
No, it was a while back.
Right, okay.
But it was one of it was A-League still, but then they all started falling over because they wanted to reap the benefits. And I was like, this is so frustrating. You're playing such good football before and now where's it gone? But that was a good atmosphere too. A lot of kids there and a lot of cheering, and they had drums and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, America does sport like no other. So we were always lucky to see basketball and ice hockey when we're over there.
Well, I was actually going to ask that too, just in the Olympic experiences. Do you get an opportunity? Because obviously your event's quite early on in the Olympics. So do you then take the rest of that to go check out many other sports?
Yeah, when I was sick, I came home because I was so unwell. So I came home for 4 days and kind of recuperated, and then I went back because I wanted to go. Yes, nice. I wanted to go to other events, and I wanted to support people that were supporting us. The big supporters in our team that year were the bobsled boys.
Yes,
they came from that rugby background. I don't know if you've met any of them, but they love that team sport, that energy, and they were the end event. So they came to every event up until that. They were such good supporters. So it was really it meant a lot for me to go to that event. I did also go to the ice hockey grand final, and that was unreal. I was sitting in the Russia
beating Germany. Yeah.
So I was sitting with a Russian, so that was super cool. But yeah, we
Great
try to get
final.
as many events as you can, but it's kind of like balloted. So
Mm.
each day you can put your name down, and if you get to go to an event, you get to go.
Well, the time we're recording this, we're just over a year away from Paris, and this is going to be something that I'm probably going to bring up on every single interview between now and Paris. I have gotten tickets to Paris next year. I'm going to my first Olympics next year. Not in the way I thought I would have as a kid, but hey, it still counts to me. But I am very, very excited to go. I think I've got like 8 different events I'm going to, so I'm thrilled. So I'm going to be doing everything I can to soak up those atmospheres, Maddi. So any advice, obviously from a different perspective, but I just feel I'm going to be too overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed watching it on TV for 16 days and then podcasting every single day about it. So this is me being there. So please pass on the advice. I would love to learn.
I think it's just like soak it up. Talk to as many people as you
Oh, I
can. Like,
will.
Olympic fanatics are like the funniest and most loving people ever. And they all got crazy stories as to how
Yeah.
and what brought them there. And I think that's like a really cool thing to soak in. And then, I mean, you got to follow your players, your teams, and really back them like no other. But also going to like those random events that you might not have
But
decided to go
that's
see.
what I've got.
Yeah.
Like, so like, because obviously the tickets are quite sold out. So like my pièce de la résistance, I can't even speak French. I'm going to struggle. But like I'm weirdly into handball. So I've gotten tickets to the bronze medal games for both the handball matches. I've got tickets to basketball, to soccer, women's golf for like a day was really cheap. And like, I'm honestly not a big golf fan, but I'm like, fuck it. It's the Olympics. I'll watch anything. So I'm really excited to go check out a day of golf. So like, it's just kind of all these things where I'm just like, I will see anything. Don't care. Dressage. I will sit in a stand and watch a horse lift its foot for 5 hours. I'm on board.
And those will be the fanatic supporters as well. So they will be the most interesting ones to do. Like everyone goes to basketball, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like swimming. Oh, God. Look at that.
Yeah,
Cairns won another gold medal.
Yeah, I know.
Cool. Like, good for
So
her.
annoying. They get so many opportunities. That's what shits me about swimming. You guys get like 10 attempts at a goal. No wonder you come home with so many.
Now, I've got to ask you this then too on the freestyle skiing front. All right, it's all well and good in Beijing. Eileen Gu, the most successful freestyle Olympian of all time, she had like 50 events until recently. Mogul skis, you've got one event. Bring in dual moguls, fantastic. But where's the fairness in that? You know, Mikael Kingsbury wins 100 gold medals in like 100 different Olympics. So come on, no disrespect to Eileen Gu, but like she's got more opportunities. Come on.
Yeah, not fair. I get that she's obviously very talented across the space. Whatever, don't show off, but we'd love to events. Yeah,
Exactly.
Bring in dual moguls.
Yeah, work it based on averages versus events you can do. So Michael Phelps, sure, you've won 400 gold medals, but if you like compare that to the amount of events that are available to you per Olympics, then there's got to be some sort of ratio that we can work out there in terms of who's the most successful, right? There we go. I like this. Maddi, we wrap up with a set of fun get-to-know-you questions. As always, these are questions that were posed to Team Canada athletes ahead of both Rio and PyeongChang. Just fun, random little questions. There's a drawing element. You don't have to do it. It's optional. We've only ever had Winter Olympians do this before, so you can always draw something and send it in to us afterwards, and we can post it up on our social media if you want to. It's usually draw a picture of yourself, draw a picture of a teammate, an animal, things like that. But speaking of Mikael Kingsbury, I'm actually using the same questions that were given to the GOAT ahead of PyeongChang. So just there's no pressure here that you kind of... Any Mikael Kingsbury stories? Do you bump shoulders with him much on the tour out there?
Mick he's awesome, to be honest. He loves to party as well. He's got best of both sides on him. But yeah, he knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing. But you'd assume as much.
Yes, exactly. Well, I still like the funnest one we've ever had here. Colin, as I said, big Moguls fan, absolutely loves the Deferla Point sisters. And we had all 3 of them on recently. And I basically love to embarrass him quite often because in the background, he has more pictures of him with the Deferla Point sisters than him with his own wife. So, you know, it was...
They're practically famous.
Exactly. There's a reality show on them completely in French in Quebec. Yeah. There you go.
Really?
You have to track it down. Colin's learning French so he can watch it. So that's basically how it is. Your favourite ever Olympic moment is?
Oh, I thought you were going to give me multiple choice for a second there.
Oh, no. I mean, look, I can make your own up. So clearly it was your own moment. Kathy in 2000, like Dale in 2006.
Is it meant to be my Olympic
It's
moment?
yours. So it's your complete. I mean, I can tell you Mikael's moment if you want, but no, this is yours. And it can be your own competing. It can be watching on TV as a kid or an adult. It's entirely up to you.
I mean, at PyeongChang, it was pretty exciting when Matt won second place. We had taken over the entire of this bar. It was Nuts Bar, so we used to say "Go Nuts at Nuts," and it was only Australians, and they were playing. I don't want to sing it, but Down Under song.
You can sing it. It's all right, man. This is an open space. You can do what you like.
I'm from the land down under.
There we go.
Anyways, we played it about 5 times thinking Matt was coming into the room. But so when he finally came in, we're like, yes. So that was pretty exciting to celebrate with him, not only like his Olympic and his Olympic model, but the fact that Australia was all around each other, backing each other. You know, we love to get behind the underdog, and Matt was a bit the underdog that year. So yeah, it was very exciting.
The thing I loved about PyeongChang, it's sort of, you know, we go back to that pressure and kind of the media attention that goes on the Australian athletes. And then, you know, both Sochi and PyeongChang were deemed failures because we didn't win any gold. But like, I never look at it that way. But to come away with a couple of silvers, obviously with Jared and Scotty also medaling as well, with the bronze, like it just seemed like such a vibe of an atmosphere. And then obviously fast forward to Beijing, our most successful in terms of medals won. Like that's what I always love about the Winter Olympians in Australia. It's just such a tight little group. There's only 30 or 40 of you, come away with like 3 or 4 medals, and you're just as happy as if we leave, you know, Tokyo with like 15 gold and the amount that we win in the summer. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think everyone's part of that journey. You see people ski and compete, so you know what you're expecting, rather than you go to the swimming and you expect gold medals, rather than we go to the moguls event and we expect to see Matt ski well, right? So we're like, and I think the difference in winter, we always talk about, you know, in summer you could cross over between any sport, right? I mean, I don't mean to be rude, but in winter, I would never do any of those other sports. Like aerial skiing, absolutely not. Jumping off a 4-story building. Like half pipe. Yes, we flip in half pipe, but we get 15 meters of landing. They get 3. Like, it's just absurd. So I think that's where there's like the respect of what everyone does is absolutely nuts, and I'll let you do your own thing. But we have so much respect for what everyone does and get to see them so close up, because I guess it's just a small space. So yeah, I think that's the kind of the niche of winter sport.
Well, it's that appeal. It's that death-defying nature, because I think we established that the only sport in the Winter Olympics that can't kill you is curling. And I mean, you probably could get killed if you put your head down as they go into, you know, the end of that. But even then, we saw how much Australia fell in love with Tali and Dean last year during the Olympics, and just what they've sort of done for that sport in this country. And I always say on this show, Maddi, Winter Olympics is my favourite of the Olympics. I love the Summer Olympics, don't get me wrong, but put a gun to my head, I'm team winter all the time. I absolutely love it. And as a kid, I remember 94, like the year you were born, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I remember when we won our first bronze. 98, I was in love with Zali Steggall when she won that bronze medal. Like everyone only knows her now as a politician. When I got her on the show, like years before she became a politician, that was like my biggest fanboy moment. I'm like, Zali Steggall, here she is. And now I don't think anybody realizes she's an Olympic bronze medalist. But yeah, love the win. Don't get me started here, Maddi. I'm too geeking out right now as it is. As a kid, who was your favorite sports team?
Oh, I liked individual athletes.
That works. Who was your favorite? Like, who was your idol growing up?
Well, my idol when I was like 14 was this girl that had done 3 ACLs in mogul skiing.
You were on the same path for her.
Yeah, and so I was like, well, she can do it, I can do it. But when I was younger, I did go to a lot of those gymnastics competitions, but I can't even remember the name of the girl, so it can't even be that much of an idol. I'm so sorry.
I'm trying to even think of those sort of Sydney 2000, like I know exactly.
But we had a lot back in the day. Now we've just got Lauren Mitchell, so easy, just throw it out there.
Yeah, George Goodwin, all those sort of people. I completely know, because I remember there was one. She ended up going into Cirque du Soleil, and I remember kind of she got notable for that as well. But I completely go. I remember, I don't know, again, 6 years old in Sydney, but Jai Wallace, the trampolinist who won a silver medal in Sydney.
I've
Remember
heard the
him?
name, but
Yeah,
yes.
our only ever Olympic medalist in
Um,
gymnastics. Great guy. A lot of fun. If you could be any superhero, who would you be?
I don't know, Spider-Man. He gets to kiss the pretty girl.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. That works. Do you have a favorite Spider-Man? Are you a Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland?
No, I didn't really watch any sort of movies.
Well, there goes that
I'm a
next question.
Transformers fan. If I was going to be
Oh,
anything, I would be Bumblebee.
okay. New one's coming out, I believe, at the time of recording this. I think we're, what, a week or so away from a new Transformers movie, aren't we? So
I couldn't tell you.
there you go. I saw the first one. I think everyone saw the
Yeah, that's the
Shia
best
LaBeouf, Megan
one.
Fox one. That was fun.
Megan Fox. Yeah, you got to go
Yeah.
down that
Oh,
path.
I think I was the right age for that. I was definitely
Yeah.
I was the audience for when Megan Fox is bent over that car as like
Yeah.
a teenager. I'm like, okay. If you could be an Olympian in any other sport besides your own, what would it be?
So I used to say gymnastics, but I think I've got to pick a team sport now. Um, I mean, I'm not very good at swimming, so I wanted to say like water polo because I know a few people in that. But I think soccer. I really like soccer.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because they're getting so much hype at the moment and they're well supported and well loved. So maybe I'm going down that route of like want to be backed by Australia.
Absolutely allowed to be. I think, like, I mean, at the time, obviously, at the time of releasing this, the Women's World Cup has been on, but at the time of recording this, we're pre that. I mean, you got much tickets, you pumped for all the games that we got going in Sydney and the final, of course, too.
Yeah, I don't have any tickets, but I should definitely do that.
I might know someone who might be able to get you a ticket or two. So just, I'll put that out there. Nudge,
Put it out
nudge,
to the
wink, wink.
universe.
Your favorite music artists are?
I used to love Kesha.
Yes.
Keeping it trashy in my teen years. Um, uh, I don't really think, I mean, I'm just like, I will listen to anything live I always listened to music when I skied, but it was always house music with just bumping beats. It wasn't so much of lyrics. But my number one top played from last year from Spotify was definitely Beyonce, and the year before it was as well.
Nice.
So strong, independent woman.
Queen Bee.
She's got some great beats, but she's also got some ones you can scream at the world when you're all pissed off. So
she's just started a tour, hasn't she? I don't think she's announced Australia yet, but I can't imagine that won't sell out in about 5 seconds when she does, right?
Yeah, better be on the refresh button.
Yeah, I'm sure Accor Stadium will have a couple of shows going on that soon. If you could eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I used to say cheese, but apparently I'm lactose intolerant and I get acne from it, so maybe not.
Damn.
I love pasta. Can I say pasta as a general? Because I can make it whatever I want every time. But yeah, pasta is my go-to.
You went that route. I'm keto, so cheese is my best friend, and pasta is sadly my number one enemy. But I do miss it, so But is lactose-free cheese any good?
I don't know. I haven't tried it. I just do I don't eat it at home because I'm trying to be good. But out on the weekends, like if I'm having a nice little burrata with my friends, I'm not going to say no.
Exactly. A couple of pieces here and there won't hurt. Your favorite place to compete? I guess we could say was now rather than is.
So I have two. Sorry. First one, Deer Valley. It's like the most spectacular event.
It's Mikael's answer here too. I swear that's the number one we always get, Deer Valley.
Yeah, night comp, you've got a huge amount of people watching. Also, my first World Cup, and you get to stay in McMansions. They have ski valet. It is just bougie to bougie can all be. But my second one is in Japan. So we used to go to a little tiny resort called Tazawako. So completely different to Deer Valley. But in Japan, mogul skiing is also kind of famous. So lots of people come watch. There's media, there's all this stuff going on. But the favorite part is after the competition. We're all staying in the same hotel and we have a tuna party. So they get this big old tuna, this guy, the chef with the chef hat, all going on, samurai sword, smacking into this tuna. And so all the poor vegans like, but yeah, we get all the different parts. So you've seen the really red parts of the tuna and then the lighter colors. Yeah. And you get it over rice, you get it as sashimi, and then we have an onsen in there. So we shuffle down in our little kimonos down to the onsen, and then we shuffle back upstairs to the karaoke room. So
wow.
Japan is just like the culture is so cute, although we do have to eat like noodles for breakfast, which when you're competing, last thing I need in my stomach, I just need a piece of toast. Um, but yeah, the culture, the place, it's like it's a big affair, even though it's in this tiny little quaint little resort in the middle of nowhere. It's nothing like Deer Valley, but it's still spectacular in its own way.
So what we're basically saying is we hope Sapporo will get the 2030 Olympics in so that Japan can go crazy for having some moguls there.
Yeah, they'll go crazy for sure.
Wow, that's crazy to think that. I think I've been to 2 ski resorts in my life, and one was in Salt Lake City. I think it was one of I don't know which event it held at the Olympics in 2002, but I remember going to the bathroom and feeling like this bathroom was more fancy than any house I've ever lived in my life. So they must love their ski resorts to the point in Utah that they just turn them into something else. Your favorite thing to do in the summer is?
Go to the beach. I'm very lucky. I live 5 minutes from Bondi. Also have a little cute little pug. If you also stalk on my Instagram, lots over there. There's a dog beach down the road, so we go to the dog beach a lot. And yeah, just try and get some vitamin D. Hang out in the sunshine.
I have to say, since living in Sydney, I've done the beach tours, and I'm quite partial to Bondi. When people ask me that question of what's your favourite, I'm like, yeah, it's probably cliche, but Bondi. Manly's fine. I like Cronulla though. My mum grew up in Cronulla, and I'm a Sharks fan, so I'm a bit partial to the Shire. But Bondi's pretty nice.
It's beautiful either way. The beaches, you get away from the crowds, but
exactly.
Bondi's full of beautiful people, beautiful beach. So
exactly.
What more could you want?
And some good TV shows. We've got Vets, we've got Rescue, you name it, it's there. Last question for you, Madii. Your favourite cartoon growing up to watch was?
We weren't even allowed to watch TV. My mum was so strict.
Wow. You're too busy doing 360s to prove that you can ski. Wow.
I remember my mum used to drop us off to a friend's house before school, and we'd watch Teletubbies before school. And I remember being excited because we were never allowed to watch TV before school, but because we were dropped to somebody else's, we just watched Teletubbies.
That was what you did though at your friend's house. I remember as a kid, South Park, The Simpsons, those sort of shows. I was never allowed to watch them, but as soon as you went to a friend's, you've got South Park on, Simpsons, I want to watch it right now. Oh, I feel naughty. Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Teletubbies, oh god, did they bring that back? I feel they did.
I feel like it still goes. I don't know.
Yeah, God, I think they did a thing recently where the baby, the son that was the baby, all grown up now, to make you feel old. So,
thank you.
Yeah. Anyway,
I know I'm old. It's okay.
Hey, I discovered how old I was the other day when I was actually at the A-League Grand Final doing some work there, and we were trying to get some clips of score predictions from fans out the front. And as we were walking outside the front, Kieran Perkins was lining up to go into the stadium. And I'm working with a 20-year-old social, TikTok sort of person. I'm like, there's Kieran Perkins. Get his thought. She looks at me, who the hell's that? I'm like what? And then pretty much everybody I work with didn't know who Kieran Perkins was.
Everyone, you need to put them in a little education seminar.
Yep. I'm just oh my God, are we living in a day and age where one of the greatest Australian athletes of all time is not known anymore? But yeah. Anyway, Madii, this has been so much fun having you on the show. I'm very insightful and really appreciate your openness and your honesty with everything that you've talked about today. If people want to stay up to date with what you've got going on in the future, social media, websites, anything that people can sort of keep up to date with you?
Yeah, my Instagram is my name, Madii.Himbury. My mum spelled it.
2 eyes, right?
Yes, 2 eyes. So like I say, on your face, 2 eyes. Mum found in a book, so apparently it sits. I do have a website, but nothing much pops up on there. So Instagram's where it's at.
Beautiful. Keep up to date with that, Madii. Really do appreciate your time. Best of luck with everything moving forward, and good luck in the rest of the Aussie rules as well. I keep looking forward to seeing that. I don't doubt you'll pull on a Swans jersey one day. Never say never. Come on.
No, if we can take the cup this year, I'll take that for a win. Thanks so much for having me on here too.